There are moments in our lives when God calls us into sacred silence, not because we are afraid to speak, but because heaven knows that silence is sometimes the strongest shield for the soul. There are truths too tender to be thrown into careless ears. There are treasures of the heart that lose their value when exposed to the wrong light. And so, God, in His divine wisdom, whispers, "Do not speak of these things." Not out of fear, but out of divine protection, out of purpose, out of spiritual clarity. Some things are meant only for the altar. Some things are meant only for prayer closets, not coffee tables. In a world that rewards oversharing and broadcasting every fragment of our lives, we are losing the sacredness of secrecy. But God is restoring it. He is reminding us that some matters are holy, and He's asking us to keep them that way. You see, God does not ask us to hide our light, but He does ask us to protect our pearls. And the five things He calls us not to share are not burdens, but blessings. They are markers of spiritual maturity. They are not weights, they are wings. They elevate us to a realm where God becomes our only audience and where silence becomes our sanctuary. The first thing God tells us not to share is the depth of our calling, because the world won't understand it. Not everyone is equipped to see what God showed you in the night. Not everyone will honor the vision God planted in your soul. When Joseph told his brothers his dream, it didn't inspire them, it enraged them. When you speak too soon about a divine appointment, you invite earthly opposition, not because the dream isn't true, but because the soil isn't ready. God may give you visions that no one else sees, instructions no one else hears, burdens no one else carries. And it is not your job to convince the world of your calling. It is your job to obey it. When you talk too much about what God whispered in private, you dilute the power of the message. What was once holy becomes common. What was once intimate becomes debated. And sometimes, in trying to prove yourself to people, you lose the presence of God. So when God tells you to hold it close, it's not to punish you, it's to preserve you. Your calling will prove itself in time. Let your fruit speak. Let your walk preach. Let your obedience be your answer. When you protect what God gave you, He multiplies it. But when you parade it before its time, you expose it to danger. Not everyone celebrates your destiny. Some people are waiting to sabotage it. So stay quiet, stay faithful. Let the vision unfold in the timing of heaven. The second thing God says to never tell anyone is the full extent of your sacrifice. We live in a world that applauds performance, but heaven applauds humility. Your sacrifice is not for show. It's not for likes, comments, or applause. The quiet obedience, the hidden tears, the late nights of prayer, the unnoticed generosity, God sees all of it. And He's asking you to keep it sacred. You don't need to announce every fast, every offering, every sleepless night interceding for others. You don't need to prove to anyone how spiritual you are. The most powerful faith is often the most silent. Jesus said, when you give, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Why? Because true sacrifice isn't about recognition. It's about relationship. When you tell everyone about what you've given up, you've already received your reward. But when you do it in secret, your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. You may not get the praise of men, but you will gain the favor of heaven. And that is worth more than gold. Some of the deepest sacrifices you've made will never be known by others. And that's okay, because the one who matters saw it all. He saw the moment you gave when you had little. He saw the time you gave when it broke your heart. He saw the night you stayed up praying for someone who would never thank you. Keep that between you and God. That's sacred ground. The third thing God says never to reveal is your battles while you're still in them. When you're in the middle of the storm, that's not the time to explain the wind. When you're walking through the fire, it's not the time to describe the flames. It's the time to trust, to walk, to keep moving forward. Because if you talk too soon, you may speak from pain instead of purpose. There's a difference between a testimony and a cry for help. A testimony is born from victory. A testimony is the story after the battle is won. But if you start speaking in the middle of your struggle, you may empower your enemy. You may invite voices of doubt, not faith. You may open the door to people who can't help you, only hurt you more. God is not telling you to suffer in silence. He is asking you to seek Him first, to take your pain to the one who understands, to pour your heart out before Him, not the world. Because some battles are so spiritual, only prayer can shift them. Only worship can war against them. Only fasting can break them. And when you go public too soon, you weaken your strength. You drain your power. There is healing in sharing, but there is timing in revealing. You must wait until the wound is closed, until the lesson is learned, until the testimony is ready. Only then should you speak, because then your words won't come from fear, they'll come from faith. They won't spread confusion, they'll bring clarity. And instead of getting sympathy, you'll give strength. The fourth thing God says never to tell is your good deeds with wrong motives. It's easy to do the right thing for the wrong reason. It's easy to serve and give and pray and love, not because you want to, but because you want something in return: recognition, approval, influence, control. And if you're not careful, even your holiness can become a performance. God is not impressed by actions. He's moved by motives. You can feed the poor and still have pride in your heart. You can preach the gospel and still be chasing power. You can sing the loudest and still be seeking validation. But God sees through it all. And He warns us, don't flaunt your righteousness. Don't advertise your kindness. Don't turn your good works into a marketing campaign. The danger is that when you start telling everyone about what you've done, you begin to believe that's who you are. You start trusting your works instead of God's grace. You become more focused on perception than purity, and eventually your faith becomes shallow. God wants your works to be born out of love, not leverage, out of surrender, not strategy, out of compassion, not calculation. So He says, don't tell. Just do, just serve, just love. Let your life preach louder than your mouth. Let your humility carry more weight than your reputation. Heaven will record it. Eternity will remember it. And when the time is right, God Himself will honor it. Very good. The fifth and final thing God says never to share is the secrets He's revealed only to you. Some revelations are not for public consumption. Some things God shows you in the secret place are meant to remain there. They are not for sermons, not for blogs, not for social media. They are for your soul alone. When God gives you a word, a dream, a divine insight, it is holy, and holiness demands reverence. Some revelations are too weighty for human interpretation. If you share them too soon, they will be misunderstood. If you share them too broadly, they will be mocked. And worst of all, they may be distorted. God speaks in layers. Some truths are meant to unfold slowly over time. When you rush the revelation, you ruin the impact. Just like you don't pull fruit from a tree before it ripens, you don't share spiritual truths before they mature. There is a reason Jesus often told people, tell no one what you've seen, not because He was hiding, but because He was protecting. When God trusts you with a secret, it's a sign of intimacy. It means He sees you as a friend. Don't betray that trust. Guard the sacred, cherish the divine, and above all, obey His voice. If He says don't tell, don't tell. Even if you're excited, even if you're bursting, even if you think others need to hear it, wait until God gives the release, because what comes from heaven must return to heaven's timing. In a world that screams, share everything, God is whispering, hide some things, not out of shame, but out of sanctity. because the things you don't say often define you more than the things you do. Restraint is a fruit of wisdom, silence is a mark of strength, and discretion is a sign of divine maturity. If you want to walk with God deeply, you must learn the language of silence. You must know when to speak and when to stay quiet. You must know the difference between expressing and exposing, between testimony and temptation, between light and lightning. God is calling his children to a higher level of discernment, to protect the sacred, to honor the unseen, to hold tightly to what is holy and not cast it before swine. He is teaching us that power isn't always loud and that some of the greatest miracles happen in silence. So let this be your prayer today. Lord, teach me what to say and what to stay silent about. Teach me when to speak and when to bow my head. Teach me to guard my heart and cover my pearls. Teach me the holiness of secrecy, the beauty of hidden obedience, the glory of sacred silence. Because when you keep what God says to keep, he will release what he's promised to release. When you protect what is private, he will promote what is public. And when you honor his voice above all others, he will raise you in due time. There's something profoundly sacred about the way God unfolds our purpose. It rarely begins in public. It almost never starts with applause. Instead, it begins in the hidden places, whispers in prayer, silent nudges in the heart, a quiet knowing deep within the soul. God does not shout our calling to the crowd. He speaks it in secret because divine purpose is holy and holiness is not meant for display. Not yet. Not until it has matured, not until it has been tested in silence. When God first reveals the path he has chosen for you, it often feels exhilarating. The vision is fresh, the promise feels close, and the calling burns like fire in your bones. But that fire is not yet ready for the open air. It must first refine you. It must first mold your character, deepen your faith, and stretch your obedience. And this kind of preparation can only happen in silence. And it is in those quiet seasons when no one sees, no one applauds, no one understands that God prepares you for what he has spoken over you. One of the greatest mistakes many make is to speak too soon, to declare a dream before it's been rooted, to shout about a promise before the ground has been tilled. When Joseph shared his dream with his brothers, he wasn't wrong, but he was early. His words stirred jealousy, not celebration, not because the vision wasn't true, but because the environment wasn't ready, and neither was he. Your calling will speak for yourself in time. You won't have to prove it. You won't have to convince anyone. The fruit will reveal the root. But in the early stages, it's fragile. Sharing it prematurely exposes it to criticism, envy, and misunderstanding. And worse, it opens the door for discouragement that can weaken your faith before your calling has even had the chance to grow. God isn't hiding you to punish you. He's hiding you to prepare you. The soil of silence is where the strongest roots are formed. The hidden season is not a delay, it's divine protection. It is in this quiet place that you learn to walk by faith, not by sight. You learn to trust God, not the approval of people. You learn to obey, even when no one is watching. That's where character is built. That's where faith is deepened. That's where your calling matures. So if God has shown you something, hold it close, cherish it, protect it. Don't rush to tell the world what heaven is, still nurturing. There will come a day when the doors will open, when the vision will unfold, when the promise will come alive before all to see. And when that day comes, you won't need to say a word. Your life will speak, your obedience will shine, and the fruit will be undeniable. In the quiet chambers of your heart, there are sacrifices only God sees. Sleepless nights spent in prayer, money given when no one knew you had none to spare, acts of love done without recognition, forgiveness extended when it cost you your pride, your comfort, even your peace. These moments, though invisible to the world, shine brightest in the eyes of heaven. They are not meant for public display. They are holy offerings, wrapped in humility and placed silently at the feet of the Almighty. But there is a great danger in trying to turn your spiritual sacrifices into stories for admiration. When you begin to speak of your good deeds for the purpose of being noticed, the act loses its eternal value. What was once an offering to God becomes a performance for men. You exchange a divine reward for the fleeting applause of people who can never understand the depth of what you gave. And when the applause fades, and it always does, so does your strength. Because your strength never came from the act itself, but from the one you were doing it for. Jesus warned us about this very thing. He spoke of the hypocrites who gave loudly, prayed proudly, and fasted openly, not to draw near to God, but to draw attention to themselves. They have received their reward, he said. In other words, their reward was never heaven's approval. It was the praise of the crowd and nothing more. What a terrible trade to make. Eternal blessings for momentary validation. Real sacrifice doesn't need an audience. Real faith doesn't require applause. What is done in secret is honored in heaven. God sees what others don't. He knows what it cost you. He heard your silent prayers. He saw your self denial. He felt the pain behind your obedience, and He remembers every tear, every act of surrender, every time you chose His way over your own. It is written down in eternity. It's not forgotten. There is a sacredness to keeping your sacrifices private. When you give without needing recognition, you're not just offering something to God, you're trusting Him with your reward. You're saying, Lord, it's enough that you see me, it's enough that you know. That kind of faith is rare, that kind of heart is precious. Let the world see the fruit of your faith, not the price you paid for it. Let your testimony be told by the grace that follows you, not by the sacrifices you announce. The most powerful stories are the ones heaven tells about you when you kept your mouth shut and your hands open. So walk in silence, but walk in faith. Give quietly, serve humbly, surrender joyfully, and when no one else claps, heaven will, and that applause will echo for eternity. When you're in the middle of a battle, everything feels uncertain. The winds are loud, the path is unclear, your heart is heavy, and your faith is being tested in ways you never imagined. In these moments, it's natural to want to reach out, want to explain what you're going through, want someone to understand the pain or confusion that weighs on your soul. But there is wisdom in silence during the storm. God often does His greatest work in the middle of our darkest nights, not when we're speaking about it, but when we're trusting Him in it. When you're in the heat of the battle, your emotions are raw, your understanding is limited, and your direction may still be unfolding. Speaking too soon can open the door to discouragement. It invites opinions that aren't rooted in faith. It exposes your wounds to people who may not know how to handle them, and worse, to those who may use them against you. Not every battle is meant to be fought in the public eye. Some victories are forged in the quiet places, behind closed doors, with tear-streaked faces and whispered prayers. When you speak about your struggles before they've been surrendered to God, you risk misinterpreting what He's doing. You invite voices that may speak out of fear, jealousy, or confusion, not out of spiritual discernment. And in doing so, you can become more confused, more burdened, more distracted. The enemy also listens. He watches closely when you expose your pain. He uses premature confessions to sow seeds of doubt, fear, and defeat. When you talk too early, you give him a map to your weak points. But when you stay silent, you keep your strength hidden. You remain tucked under the shadow of the Almighty, where the enemy cannot touch what he cannot see. There will be a time to speak when the battle is won, when your testimony has been sealed by God's deliverance. That's when your voice will carry power. That's when your story will inspire faith instead of confusion. That's when you'll be able to speak from a place of victory, not vulnerability, and people will listen not to your pain, but to your perseverance and your praise. The silence in the storm is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's an act of trust. It's a declaration that says, God, I may not understand this right now, but I choose to walk through it with you. I don't need the world's opinions. I need your guidance. That kind of faith shakes heaven. That kind of silence is a spiritual weapon. So when the storm rages, draw closer to God. Let him be your counselor, your comforter, your defender. Talk to him, trust him, hide in him. And when the dust settles and the light breaks through, then you will rise. Not just with a story, but with a testimony that carries the fragrance of heaven and the unmistakable mark of divine victory. Glory carried burden. There is a subtle danger in doing good things for the wrong reasons. From the outside, the deed may look noble, helping the poor, serving in the church, offering kind words, giving generously. But if the motive is corrupted by pride, self-promotion, or the desire to be seen, then the spiritual power behind the act is lost. God is not impressed by the performance of righteousness. He is moved by the purity of the heart behind it. Then you can't hide motives from God. He sees deeper than any human eye can. While people may only observe the action, God looks straight into the soul. He discerns the intention behind every word spoken, every dollar given, every gesture made. This is why Scripture warns us not to do our righteous deeds before men to be seen by them, because once you seek man's approval, you've already received your reward, and it's shallow, fleeting, and empty. Good deeds done for attention are like leaves without roots. They may appear vibrant for a while, but they won't last. They have no eternal value. God is not honored by what we do to impress others. He is honored by what we do when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when no one is praising us. Those are the moments that count in the kingdom of heaven. Your love for others should not be loud, it should be deep. Your giving should not be dramatic, it should be sincere. Your kindness should not be a performance, it should be the natural overflow of a heart transformed by grace. True goodness doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need hashtags or applause. It simply flows quietly, humbly, consistently. This doesn't mean you should hide your light. Jesus said to let your light shine before others, but for a purpose, not so that they may praise you, but so they may glorify your Father in heaven. Your life should be a reflection of God's goodness, not a stage for your own. It takes deep humility to do good without needing credit. It takes spiritual maturity to serve when no one acknowledges it, but that is where the blessing lies. That is where heaven pays attention. Every unseen act, every quiet offering, every small kindness done with the right heart, it is all recorded in eternity. God doesn't forget, and he rewards those who seek his glory above their own. So before you act, check your heart. Ask yourself, who am I doing this for? If the answer is God, then you won't need validation. His approval will be enough. His presence will satisfy you. And his rewards, though unseen now, will one day be more than you could ever imagine. Let your life be full of goodness that doesn't demand recognition. Let your love be genuine, your service quiet, and your motives pure. Because in the end, it's not about what you did, it's about why you did it. And when your why is right, everything else falls into place. There are moments in your spiritual walk when God whispers something to your heart, a revelation so deep, so sacred, that it can only be understood by you. These divine revelations are not meant to be shared hastily or with just anyone. They are treasures entrusted to you by God for a reason, to guide, shape, and mold you into who he has called you to be. To share them prematurely or with the wrong people can open doors to confusion, doubt, or even mockery. When God speaks to you, he does so with a purpose. Some truths are too precious, too powerful to be spoken carelessly. These revelations are meant to be pondered, prayed over, and nurtured in the silence of your heart until their time comes to be revealed in fullness. They are not just knowledge to be shared, they are the very blueprint for your spiritual growth. God has chosen to trust you with this sacred insight. It's a gift, not a commodity, to be flaunted. We see this in the Bible when God gave Joseph the dream of his future, a dream of greatness, of his family bowing before him. At that time, Joseph's brothers were not ready to hear it. They were not equipped to understand it. And though Joseph shared his dream with them, the timing wasn't right. His brothers' jealousy and anger became the very catalyst for the trial he would face before reaching his destiny. The revelation was true, but the timing was off. The seed was sown too early. The seed needed to be planted in his heart, not broadcast to others for it to grow and develop. There is wisdom in holding your sacred revelations close. Not everyone is prepared to handle what God has shown you. Some will misunderstand, some will mock, some will try to discourage or derail you. This is why at times the best response to a divine revelation is silence. Let God unfold his purpose in you. Protect the sacredness of his voice. There is an appropriate season for every revelation, and when the time is right, the truth will speak for itself. Sometimes sharing divine insight too soon doesn't just lead to misunderstanding, it can lead to spiritual sabotage. When you reveal too much to the wrong person, you expose yourself to the influence of doubt. There are people who are quick to speak words that might diminish your faith, causing you to question whether you heard God at all. And even when you share your revelation with someone who has good intentions, their own fears, lack of understanding, or limited perspective can cause you to second guess what God has said. This is why guarding your revelations is so vital. When you protect what God has shown you, you are also protecting your own spiritual journey. You are allowing that divine insight to be nurtured and strengthened in the quiet places. You are choosing to trust God's timing, knowing that he will bring the right people into your life at the right moment. People who will affirm, encourage, and support the work he is doing within you. Remember, some truths are not for public consumption. Not every divine whisper is meant for a platform. Some revelations are meant for your personal growth, your private prayers, and your quiet obedience. You don't need to share them with everyone, and you don't need to convince others of their validity. Let God be the one to bring them into the light at the right time. When you protect the secrets God has entrusted to you, you also protect the work he is doing in you. And in the right season, that work will bear fruit, not just for you, but for the world. So be discerning, be patient, and be wise in safeguarding the divine revelations he shares with you. There is a power in silence that cannot be overstated. In a world that thrives on noise, on constant talking, on always being heard, choosing silence can feel counterintuitive. Yet it is often in the quiet moments, when we choose to hold our tongue, that God's power works most deeply in us and through us. Sacred silence is not a mark of weakness, but a profound sign of spiritual maturity. It is a sign of someone who has learned to listen more than speak, to discern the right time to speak, and to trust in God's timing rather than their own impulses. God honors those who know when to be silent. There is wisdom in silence that only comes through a heart that has been humbled and shaped by God's Spirit. Often the temptation is to respond quickly, to defend oneself, to correct others, or to share every thought and feeling that comes to mind. But true maturity comes in knowing that not every battle needs to be fought with words. Not every disagreement needs a rebuttal. Not every situation requires our immediate response. Sometimes the most powerful response is the one we don't give. Discretion is an essential part of spiritual maturity. It is the ability to know what should be said, when it should be said, and most importantly, what should remain unsaid. In a world where opinions are given freely and everyone has a voice, the ability to stay quiet when necessary is a rare and valuable gift. There is a time to speak, yes, but there is also a time to listen, to wait, and to trust that God is moving even in the spaces of silence. Humility is another reason why silence is so powerful. In choosing not to speak, we are saying, I trust that God is in control. I don't need to defend myself. I don't need to be heard. His will, not mine, be done. This act of submission speaks volumes. It shows that we understand that our voice is not always necessary to fulfill God's plan. Sometimes God works in ways that are beyond our understanding, and our silence acknowledges His sovereignty. When we are quick to speak or act, we may unintentionally step outside of His will. But when we choose silence, we give God the space to work His will in His time, in His way. Obedience is at the heart of sacred silence. God often asks us to hold our tongues, not because He wants us to suffer, but because He is protecting us. He knows that words spoken in haste can wound relationships, destroy reputations, or cause unnecessary confusion. He knows that the right words spoken at the right time can bring healing, peace, and understanding. Therefore, obedience to God means trusting that He will open the right doors and give us the right words when the time is right. When we choose to stay silent, we reflect the heart of Christ. Jesus himself, though innocent and unjustly accused, chose silence before his accusers. He did not respond to every false accusation or engage in every argument. He knew that his mission was not to win debates, but to fulfill the will of the Father. His silence was a powerful statement of trust, of submission, and of obedience. It was in his silence that the ultimate victory was won. Sacred silence is not about avoiding confrontation or neglecting responsibility. It is about exercising wisdom in knowing when to speak and when to remain quiet. It is about recognizing that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to say nothing at all. It's about understanding that God's voice is louder than any of ours and trusting that He will speak on our behalf when it is necessary. The ability to be silent when the world urges us to speak is a mark of spiritual maturity. It is a sign that we are learning to trust God more than our own understanding. It is a sign that we have surrendered our need for validation and recognition and have chosen to let God work in His perfect timing. And in that sacred silence, God's presence is often felt the most deeply, shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for greater purposes.